Hey, and Dell Bigtree is here with me today. Great to see you, Dell, and excited to talk about your documentary, Inconvenient Study. If you haven't seen it, it came out, I believe, in October, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just curious about the fallout. And as a background, it's a study comparing a large group of children, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I believe it's the largest study of its kind. And it was done in collaboration with Henry Ford Medical Center, esteemed infectious disease doctor, Dr. Marcus Zervos. And at the conclusion of the study, it was not published. And Dell, you uncovered that. Tell us a little bit more about the story behind the documentary and what has happened since then.
Well, the story is really comes from I was on tour with Vaxxed, which was the first documentary I made. I left my job as a producer on the CBS talk show The Doctors to put out Vaxxed. I was on tour with that film when we were going to be traveling up through Michigan, told me I can introduce you to the head of Henry Ford Health, Dr. Marcus Zervos. So I had dinner with him. I cover all of this in the film, but the film is about the fact that I challenged him in that conversation. You know, if vaccines are so great and you're pro-vaccine, why don't you do a comparative study comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated children, all of their health outcomes? It took years. That was 2016. I really started pressuring around 2018. By 2020, he finished doing that study. You used the term collaboration. Some people have said that I can collaborate. There was no collaboration. This was completely housed and funded by Henry Ford Health and their head of infectious disease, Dr. Marcus Zervos. I think what makes this story so important is there's now around 10 studies worldwide of comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated, but they tend to, as all retrospective studies, which is a study that just looks back at data that's already happened versus setting up a study of, prospectively that chooses groups and can be a little bit more accurate in how it wants to sort of balance those groups. So there's always going to be some, issues with any retrospective study, but this is the 10th study of its kind. It's the first time it's really been done by what I think you could argue is a very pro-vaccine establishment in Henry Ford Health. They ran the Moderna trials, and a very pro-vaccine head of the study, Dr. Marcus Zervos, who was the head of the Moderna trials for Henry Ford Health, Moderna being the COVID vaccine. So, and he states that, and so we've never, and to me, this is the scientific method. I mean, you understand this. There's one thing I think that all science has a potential bias to it, especially when studies are done. We're getting so used to hearing from the medical journals that 50% of this peer-reviewed science is not reproducible. Funding is involved. There's a lot of corruption. And so, what we know is bias is possible to affect a study. So I think it's important that if in any of these conversations now, that all sides bring forward their best evidence. And so, in asking Henry Ford to do, essentially Dr. Zervos to do this, I was reaching out to the other perspective. This is not coming from, and look, Brian Hooker has done great studies. I think he does good science, but he has an autistic child. People will say that's affecting his bias. There's been others like Dr. Paul Thomas did a huge study of his own practice up in, I think it was Oregon. And, same thing. I mean, he's allowing children to not vaccinate. So you could argue that there was a bias there. I wanted to see the science done by someone that absolutely believed vaccines were great, that if there is going to be a bias, is going to push in the side of the vaccinated. And so when this study, wasn't being published, what that said to me is, why is it? I mean, clearly they must have, done whatever they could in this data to try and make the outcome look good for the vaccinated. And instead, I think it proves to be one of the most damning studies for vaccinations that has ever been published or not published or ever been done. Now, why didn't they publish it? He says it in his own words. As you know, at the center of the film, I couldn't get them to publish it, even though that was our agreement. I said, look, obviously the bias is on your side. I have no control over it. just one rule: whatever you find in this study, publish it, and I'll accept that outcome. So when he didn't publish it, he was really breaking the trust and the agreement that we'd made. And after many, many phone calls, I realized I was running out of time. And so I called him, said, let's go to dinner. I brought hidden cameras and recording equipment. And I had him, explain, why aren't you publishing it? What's wrong with the study? And if you watch the film, you get to see it in his own words, which is, essentially he says, I can't think of, when I say, is there a better way to do this study? I can't think of any way you could do this study better. Is this study important? It's very important. Will you publish it? I'm not going to publish it because it'll be the end of me. It'll destroy my career. I say, if there was any other climate, obviously you're afraid of the climate that this study is being done in, where the pharmaceutical industry and the media attacks doctors for, like you, Mary, like Peter McCullough, who you just had on, all of these great people that really shouldn't be risking everything to tell us the truth, to give us their opinion on what they're seeing. But I said, if the climate was different, would you publish this as it is? He says, I would publish it exactly as it is. So what we hear and recognize is he is afraid of the establishment of science, the establishment of medicine, and that's why it's not getting published. So that's why I decided, to make a movie and show exactly what he said and show the public this really incredible study.
How did he share the data with you? How did you access the data?
He gave me when I went and had dinner, he gave me the study right there. You can watch it. It's the first time I see it. I know it's bad because he's telling me on the phone things like, Del, when I agreed to do this study, I did not realize I was agreeing to end the vaccine program. I've said, that's a pretty strong statement. What's in this study? He's like, it did not turn out how I had expected it would turn out. So that let me believe it's clearly not making the vaccinated look healthier. But I didn't get my hands on that study until we're at dinner. And you get to see that dinner in this film and the hidden camera footage. But there was nothing I could do with it, really. It was really hard. That was there was still 2020 that came out. In 2022, I recorded, I get handed the study. It's still, now it's 2026. This was released in 2025. People say, what took so long? I didn't see any way to legally publish that study. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. And in some ways, I think there'd be copyright issues. I also didn't want to undermine the study by having it come from me. I didn't want this to be an ICANN production or a Highwire or even a Dell Bigtree. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't touch this study. I didn't make this study. And if I, suddenly publish it, it would, everyone that calls me an anti-vaxxer would undermine what this study really represents. But we were given a way forward just in the summer, just last summer. Aaron Siri, my attorney that does all the work for the Informed Consent Action Network and the work that we do, he had a copy of the study and he handed it to Senator Ron Johnson. And it was Ron Johnson that said, look, I don't have a copyright issue because it's for the public good. I can publish this on the Senate website. And in fact, didn't even say I could, says I'm going to. And I'm also going to have a hearing on this in roughly a month and a half. And that's when I got a call from Aaron. If you're going to make a documentary, it has to be ready in a month and a half because Ron Johnson's going to have a hearing. I wasn't crazy about it. I would like to have a year to make that film. But under the circumstances, we said we're going to do whatever it takes. And frankly, I think the film turned out better because of it. There's things that, for instance, we had to keep the story so simple and to the point. I have a tendency, as you can probably tell right here, to be long-winded. I'm the same way. I want to prove every side of a point. But there were things in the film, since we didn't have much time, where I tried to explain COVID and the pandemic, and we just realized we don't have time for that. I can't get all the technical, the sound, the visual images to cover that part of the story. So it kept making us go back to what is just the simple point this film is trying to make. And it's really simple. There's never been a placebo prospective trial prior to licensure of any of the vaccines we've given our kids. In fact, it is less tested than the COVID vaccine. And that's a horrible thing to recognize. But that statement needs to be made clear so that we understand what the importance of these retrospective studies are, and then why this Henry Ford study is so important and how it all came about. So the film is very simple. It's less than 90 minutes long. It's the shortest movie I've ever made, but I think it is incredibly effective, and I'm very proud of it. It's nearing 100 million views worldwide. I have seen this study now debated in parliaments in England, in Australia. I watched Dr. Peter Gutcha, who is one of the founders of the Cochrane collaboration, which is, I think, one of the highest esteemed, or was one of the highest esteemed scientific bodies, debating it, saying, look, I've seen Henry Ford's complaints about this study, but it does not explain the size of the difference we're seeing between the vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. And just for people watching, the broad strokes are, the study finds that you're 2.5 times more likely to develop a chronic disease, either autoimmune or neurological disorder. You're 2.5 times more likely to develop a disease if you've been vaccinated, 6 times more likely to have a neurodevelopmental disorder if you've been vaccinated compared to unvaccinated, and nearly 6 times more likely to have autoimmune disease. And there's a graph that is really shocking in the study that shows, looking out 10 years, what are the odds, or, what is the percentage of vaccinated versus unvaccinated will have a chronic disease. Within 10 years, it's expected that 57% of children who receive at least one vaccine will have a chronic disease by the time they're 10 years old. And only 17% of the unvaccinated appeared that they would have a chronic disease. So those are, we're not, I mean, you're used to studies. I am. 25% increase, 60% increase. A 60% increase would be massive. This is 500% increased risks. I mean, it's just off the scale.
Well, I have to commend you. I had no idea you only had 90 days to whip that documentary out, and it was extremely well done. It made me cry. It left me with deep regret over vaccinating, being so compliant with my own children. So I really encourage everybody to watch it and share it. Is the study still available? Is it on Senator Ron Johnson's?
It's on the Senate. It's on the Senate website, but it's also on, if you go to inconvenientstudy.com, we've posted the entire study there. Anyone can download it. As you know, we've posted all of the cease and desist letter and accusations of defamation that we received from Henry Ford Health. We address their concerns with our response to those concerns and some of the things that, the holes that people have tried to poke in the study. We are trying to, be as transparent as possible. Look, every study should be challenged. I'm happy to have the study challenged by all sides. I'm really happy with the debate that's happening online internationally over this study. But I would say this, no matter what holes you can poke in it, there's only one way to really overcome what we're seeing there, and that is someone in the world is going to have to do a similar study comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated and show us that in their study, the vaccinated are healthier, because this study's been done 10 times now, and every single time, no matter who does it, and this being obviously by the most, I think clearly pro-vaccine. It's my opinion that they're pro-vaccine based on what Dr. Marcus Zervos says himself and what the establishment that Henry Ford has done. But at this point, I think the results are so shocking. People like Dr. Peter Gutcha are saying this study needs to be reproduced all over the world. It needs to be reproduced by Kaiser Permanente and all of the health data they have. It needs to be reproduced by Harvard, medical schools, the Harvard Pilgrim system. It should be reproduced by CDC. It should be reproduced by NHS in England. I think every major medical institution and every single government regulatory agency that has this data should compare vaccinated to unvaccinated, make that data transparent. I would love for Henry Ford to make this data transparent so that people can pick through it and really know, what are we actually looking at here? This is how science should be done, and it's not being done this way. And so I'm happy with all the challenges, and I think that this study really does stand up when you look at those challenges.
Have you heard from Dr. Zervos since you aired the documentary?
I have not heard from him. I did not. I was being interviewed by a major media institution recently, and that reporter told me that they reached out to Henry Ford Health. And look, this writer is probably doing a hit piece on me, is definitely pro-vaccine, and said they would not allow any access to Marcus Zervos. So that is the closest you could get. That was a friendly, I guess, for their side, and they're not letting him speak to anybody. I also want to point out that when we received the cease and desist letter, Henry Ford was unaware at that moment. They were trying to stop the film from coming out. They were unaware that I had hidden camera footage of the head of the study. So when they were making statements, their statement is essentially that the reason it wasn't published by Henry Ford Health is that the data was not good data and that it didn't meet the scientific rigors that they expect or, to have happen in studies done by Henry Ford Health. They said all of that prior to me talking to Marcus Zervos and having him say the study is as good as you could possibly do it. It's their own data from Henry Ford Health. So if their data is not good for that study, I don't know then what's wrong with the data. And ultimately, he is saying that he is not publishing it. And by the way, he has the power to publish it outside of Henry Ford Health. He's in a position to do that. He is not publishing it because of what the study results are and what he believes that would do to his career. Those are his words, not mine. I think that that's very important to know.
Yeah. So they sent you a cease and desist, but I guess there's been no follow through on that.
No follow through on that. I think that, to bring a defamation case, I don't think any of us want to see that happen. I think that, and I don't think that there's really much of a case there. I think the fact that the lead head of this study is making all the statements that the film does. We're like what really, and I think you've watched it. We don't overstate what is there. I make it very clear that this study says what this study says, that it is not published. You can listen to the lead scientist in the film say why it isn't published and come to your own conclusions. And I want to make it clear, as I say at the very end of the movie, does this study prove that vaccines are causing this chronic disease epidemic? No, it does not prove that. What it shows us is a major signal, a very important signal. I think the fact that, as I said, it's one of 10 others like it, the body of these studies start really leaning you towards the fact that we really may have a problem here. But what it should ignite is a movement worldwide for every human being to demand that their regulatory agencies do this exact study. Because if this study proves to be true, and vaccines are making us 200% more likely, doubling our increased risk of having a chronic disease in our lifetime, then it's doing the opposite of what it was designed to do. This vaccine program was supposed to make our children healthier. And as as we've all reported, our children are not healthier. Our children are the sickest we have ever seen them. Especially in America, it's the sickest children in the industrialized world. If you take malnutrition out of the equation, it probably makes our children the sickest in the entire world. We have the best hospital systems in the world. I thought we had the best food supply in the world. I thought we had the best water systems in the world. And we thought we had the best vaccine programs in the world. So if that's not working, and our kids have gone from 12% chronic disease. 12% of them had a chronic disease in the 1980s. We're not talking some bygone era. When I was a kid, 12% of us had chronic disease. Now that is going over 50%. Some stats show 54%. I think the Trump administration saying 40%. They're not including, I think, obesity in there, which takes the whole thing over the edge. And I think the CDC just reported that Americans are now hitting, I think it's 76% of us have chronic disease. Something has gone tragically wrong. And I think it all should be on the table. And what this study shows us is, of all the things that you're going to keep out of the discussion of what is causing this chronic disease epidemic, it most certainly should not be vaccines. At the very least, this signal tells us that has to be on the table with fluoridation, with plastics, with forever chemicals, with glyphosate and herbicides and pesticides on our crops. I believe I'm praying that that's what Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing, is getting investigations and studies done on all of these factors that are obviously contributing to an environmental crisis that is making our children sick and us sick.
Have you had any conversations with Jay Bhattacharya? Could the NIH run the study?
I have not talked to Jay Bhattacharya. I mean, as you know, I was director of communications for Robert Kennedy Jr. Now that he is in that position, I essentially stepped away because I'm a journalist, and if I have the inside scoop, I'm going to have to tell it. So I've made it clear. Let me go ahead and judge this from the outside like everybody else has. I will say this, that I know Bobby very, very well, and the work that he is doing isn't just because we're complaining about the vaccine program now, or we're showing issues in studies with autism, or because of Henry Ford Health. The entire reason he ran for president was because he had an issue with this vaccine program on top of glyphosate. He has brought his own cases on pesticides, herbicides, on fluoridation, all of these things. So we have the exact right guy in there to look at all of these things. But I think we're also watching complications inside of an administration that probably likes some of this and not other things. I'm really disheartened to see that the Supreme Court is going to take up the issue of the possibility of giving liability protection to Bayer, Monsanto, and others for pesticides on crops that is being promoted and was pushed forward by our own Department of Justice inside of this Maha administration. Somehow the government decided to ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on something that is clearly already being decided in courts. This product is causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they're losing billions of dollars over it. They should not get liability protection. But I do want people to pay attention to this, because this is exactly what happened with the vaccine program. You are taking a product that was destroying lives, that they said we're losing so much money from death and injury cases on vaccines, we can't make a profit. The exact same argument that Bayer Monsanto is making right now. And our government stepped in, didn't say, hey, sorry, make a healthier, safer product for our kids. They said, great, you know what? We're going to step in and give you liability protection. That is what is now, we're watching it all in real time happen again. This is the corruption of government. This is a corporate corruption of government. No one in America should want this. I can't imagine anyone walking down the street wants to have a free ride on pesticide, herbicide companies that, even if it kills people, causes cancer, causes problems, poisons our children, that you can't sue them. That is not a free market. I don't know why Donald Trump would support that. That is not a libertarian value. It's certainly not a conservative value. I don't think it's an American value. Our system is based on freedom, and it's a free market system where I can sue if you hurt me. You can get lawyers. If I win, you can decide to either take your product off the market or make a better product. That is how this works, and it's why I think this vaccine program is so problematic. It has got a protection that nothing else has, and now we can see, are we going to give more poisonous products liability protection? That certainly is not the American way.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much work to do. I don't think most people realize that we are not protected from medical mandates going forward.
Right.
The Supreme Court has yet to rule on that, so they could pull what they pulled on us during the pandemic at a moment's notice. But I really appreciate all the work you have done. This film is incredible. Everybody should go get it and watch it. Is it free still?
It's free. It will always be free. You know, this is the work that my nonprofit does based on the people, you know, that donate every single month to make this work happen so that we can continue these investigations. We are bringing more lawsuits, I think, than any nonprofit. We have 90 lawsuits right now for medical freedom across the country. We're deep in a battle to bring back the religious exemption in West Virginia, which we won. We won in court just a few weeks ago, right before the holidays. But ACLU is fighting us. I mean, we've got all sorts of groups moving in, so they've moved it into the appellate court. So we're in the fight of our lives. But I You know, as you know, I am fighting for medical freedom. You have the right to choose. You have the right. You want to poison your kids on some level. If you believe vaccines are safe, that's your decision to make. But you can't force your belief system on me. You can't force me to inject me or my children with any products, or we're not free citizens. Then we have the same exact rights as a farm animal. A cow doesn't get to decide whether it's vaccinated or not. And right now, in 5 states for sure, California, Connecticut, West Virginia at the moment, Maine, New York, you're a cow, like you're a farm animal. They're injecting you and your children. You have no freedom. I'm sorry. But in the rest of the states, we can opt out of that mandate. But I'm with you. Until we have ended mandates, and by the way, if we really want to copy the Denmark schedule, which Robert Kennedy just, did, essentially, we just dropped the Denmark schedule, which is fantastic. It's the greatest shift in our vaccine program we've seen in my lifetime. It's cut us from 54 injections down to 23, which is a huge step in the right direction, but follow all the way through. How about Denmark doesn't mandate it? And I want that part of the Denmark schedule. I don't think any of these remaining vaccines, none of them should be mandated upon us. It should be a choice. So you're right. There's a lot of work to do.
We need to follow in Russia's footsteps. They do not mandate the shots.
Isn't that amazing?
Russia does not mandate the shots, so we need to follow in their footsteps.
I agree.
So, thank you so much, Del. We could talk for another hour. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I really appreciate you coming on and love to have you back on soon.
Thank you for your, true voice out there. Thank you for the sacrifices that you've made. And for everybody, please go to inconvenientstudy.com, and you can actually buy little cards that you can hand out to that pregnant mom at a store. This is, and just say, hey, you should watch this movie. We really want to see everyone in the world get this information, because as Peter McCullough said, the power is in the people. There's only so much Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to do, but we need to keep that pressure up in our court systems in this country. We are shifting the consciousness around these conversations, but that shift is made better every time we get a new person enrolled and recognizing that we need to stand side by side. I think this film is an amazing tool to do that. So I hope everyone goes to inconvenientstudy.com and takes advantage of its existence.
Great. Thank you. We'll leave it in the comments. Good to see you again, Del.
You too.
And that's it for today. Thanks for joining. Please check out our sponsors. They make this show possible: Goldco and the Wellness Company.